Before the headlines, before the funding, before the spotlight, there were builders. We mastered survival. We mastered hustle. But India's next chapter demands more. When resources were scarce, we built with ingenuity. When systems were missing, we built with trust. It demands systems. It demands standards. It demands scale. Not just businesses that run, but businesses that lead. This is the voice of India's builders. This is Beyond Jugaad.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. My name is Ajit Panikar and I run an air conditioning company, Nova, and a tech startup, Pure Blue, in the HVAC&R industry. And like many of you, I've spent years working with entrepreneurs, business owners, and builders across India. A few months ago, a few of us were in a conversation about something every Indian entrepreneur knows a little too well: Jugaad. Now, Jugaad is a clever fix, a low-cost solution, a way to get things done when resources are scarce and time is short. In uncertain markets and unpredictable environments, Jugaad gives us agility. It helps us move fast, and very often it helps us survive. Now, for years, we have learned how to stretch limited resources, how to think on our feet, and how to solve problems quickly when the system doesn't cooperate. And to be clear, that wasn't ignorance, it was adaptation. But somewhere along the way, survival habits can also become limitations. We start solving problems only when they explode. We keep fixing today instead of building tomorrow. Jugaad helped Indian entrepreneurs, but the next chapter of an MSME's growth in India requires something more: systems, strategy, and business that are built to scale. And that's exactly what this podcast is about. Welcome to Beyond Jugaad. Now, to explore this idea with me, I'm joined by two wonderful friends and sharp thinkers: Ms. Sarika, Sethi, a business coach and director at Gemini Power Hydraulics, and Samkit, Shah, founder and CEO of Allied Pillars. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you, Ajit. Hello,
Thanks,
Sarika.
Sethi. Hi, Samkit.
Awesome. So this is our first episode. To all our viewers around, thank you very much for joining us live. And let me get you started. Sarika, I want to start with you. What's Jugaad? Is that good or terrible thing for business? Have you ever done Jugaad stuff?
Well, yes. See, a lot of us MSME started in a very small way. We had limited resources and we had to think on our feet. So I would call Jugaad as something like, improvisation that people do when they have a short time, limited resources, and they need to get things done.
So Samkit, what's your take on this? Is it a good or a terrible thing for business? And have you ever done Jugaad in your business?
I think, like Sarika mentioned, everybody has to pass through the journey of doing a Jugaad. But people love to define Jugaad as innovation. That's convenient. It's flattering that we are doing innovation under the name of Jugaad. But that's not what it should mean. Because in the Indian context, the definition has become, Ajit, fix it today, we'll deal with tomorrow later. We don't want to fix problems permanently. We want to fix it emotionally, temporarily, and very heroically. And that's the problem. Like Sarika mentioned, it's a survival instinct of working within limited resources. And the problem is when you solve those problems only when they explode. If that's your Jugaad definition, then it's a big concern.
I think
For me, go ahead, Sarika.
that is why I use the word improvisation and not innovation.
Correct.
It is just quick thinking on your feet that I would call Jugaad. Innovation becomes an entirely different thing.
Yeah.
So, and in fact, in my case, often what we have always found is, when your resources are limited, you can't hire good people, you don't have enough money, you're thinking on your feet and saying, how do I get started? How do I solve this problem? And how do I get going with this? But somehow when I also realize is, that you hit so much of success thinking on your feet and getting it done. It becomes a little bit of a difficult when you actually want to convert it to scale, when you want to convert it into a process. And that also leads to the next point that I've always asked, is discipline. How important is process, and is the discipline of process truly a growth engine? Samkit, how important is that process? How does that transition happen from thinking on your feet, scaling up, moving to the next level? And how does that you move into a process? What is a process? What is the discipline around this?
So, I've never met any entrepreneur who says discipline nahi hona chahiye. But actually, what they mean is everyone else should be disciplined. I should remain flexible. Now
That's ownership, right? I'm at the top of the value chain. Nothing is. I'm only supposed to give gyan below. Nothing for me.
and I want to be absolutely flexible. So it's okay if my decisions keep changing. It's okay if I make a mistake in my decision, but my team is expected to be disciplined. And that does not really help the company. And you rightly mentioned that it can lead to a challenge in scaling up, because discipline, in my belief, is nothing but just predictability. Is your business predictable in its delivery, in its quality, in its behavior? If not, how does a customer trust you? How does your team trust you? And that's why discipline, without discipline, you cannot understand Jugaad in its entirety.
Yeah. Over to you, Sarika.
Why are we just talking about Jugaad and discipline in terms of business? Can we even run our life if we are not disciplined? If we don't follow a process of, getting up at a certain time, doing certain morning routines, going to the office at a particular time, coming back from the office, what are these? These are just structured, consistent applications and processes. And that's what discipline is. Doing something which is planned, operationally efficient because you are thinking it through, and something that is predictable and reliable. Isn't that how we run our lives? Or is it that, आज मैं रात को 11 बजे सोऊंगा and नहीं मैं कल सुबह 10 बजे उठूंगा, doesn't matter, I'll go to the office. We are all at our offices at 9 o'clock. And that is what is discipline. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, and sometimes, I like to actually connect the two with what both of you guys just said. One is, these things don't apply for me; it apply for my people. Somehow we are the know-it-all guys because we are just at the top of the value chain. And I think that's a very important takeaway that there are certain things that we need to follow before we actually start putting in. And the other important thing when it comes to the process, I've always believed that a process is something that you can put it down in black and white. It is something that you cannot explain to people ki kaam aisa hona chahiye. You've got to write it down and you got to say that so that it's transparent. So if you have 5 people looking at it, everyone knows what is a process and they all value it. And from here comes another problem. Okay, now let's say if you have actually put a process in place, how do you make sure the discipline on following the process is there? Because it's one person. If I have to manage my day, I keep a control. But if I have to manage a team of 15, 20 people and expect everybody to follow the process, how do I do it? Can technology be an enabler for this? Sarika?
Putting standard operating procedures in anything in life helps everyone come on the same page. I think just defining it for your teams that this is how it has to be done is enough to get the work done. Today, because technology has advanced to such a large extent that we have these wonderful tools which are available, the ERPs, the CRMs, the AI which is available, it makes our life even more easier because everyone is online and can access the methodology in which it has to be done. So yes, technology makes it easier. You don't have to be repetitive. You don't have to keep reminding people. It is there. You can look at it, you can enter it, and you can follow it. So technology definitely is an enabler to put a process and discipline in place, is my thought.
What's your take, Samkit, on this?
It's very interesting. We have been talking about AI and the likes of AI, but the words digital, digitalization, digitization are so randomly used. Most businesses say that they are digitally transformed, but what they actually mean is something by Excel sheet. अभी हम WhatsApp पे share करते हैं. Now my person is able to send what the report of his today's activities on Excel. So we are pretty much digitalized, and that is, in my opinion, biggest lack, because Indian businesses don't lack tools. Like Sarika mentioned, everything is there on the platter. But we've got so used to, as MSMEs, SMEs, relying on, for example, WhatsApp as our CRM, taking mental notes as our task list, go and check the go down manually as our inventory control mechanism, and a very, very heavily made spreadsheet, which only one person understands who's made it. Now, these are shortcuts which make you feel fast, but they actually create blind spots. And blind spots, in my opinion, they create absolute chaos. So technology can be an enabler, but the way we use it has to be probably coming top down.
Samkit, I
Amazing.
feel if we can even move from those mental notes to an Excel sheet, it is the progress.
It is,
At least the data is getting transmitted from the entrepreneur, the owner's mind into something that is
Correct.
accessible. So even this shift, bhahi khata likhna, ya wo chopdi likhna, ya whatever is the traditional way of doing it, usse
Correct.
hum thoda bhi agar aage jayenge, we've taken the first step. AI is still something which scares a lot of people, but I'm saying even if we start with baby steps towards technology and using technology as an enabler, it can go a long way. Ajit, don't you
But
think?
I just want to add, Ajit, while Sarika absolutely hit the right point, the trust also is very important. And I'll give you a very small example. A third generation is trying, in a retail business. Very important that at the end of the day they do their hisab and they leave the shop. The biggest complaint of that third generation to me is, Samkit bhai, I am supposed to be in the showroom till 10:30 in the night. Why so? Because mujhe hi sab kuch, every chit I have to sign, I have to check. My grandfather and my father will not allow me to systemize it onto a technology. Now, how does a company change when that mindset does not change?
There are 2, 3 things that are big takeaways, and I remember this. ये corporate में चलता है, हमारे यहाँ पे नहीं चलता. That's a. I find this, among a lot of these entrepreneurs, they're all doing very well, and then this whole myth, that चल रहा है ना, क्यों बदले? I can share some experience. I run a tech startup where we sell a lot of the platforms to our industry colleagues, and often I come across people who say that, अच्छा सॉफ्टवेयर लिया तो सब कुछ ठीक हो जाएगा, प्रोसेस बन जाएगा. It's just a tool. A software is just a tool. Very few people understand that you can never implement the software if the process itself is not in place.
Correct. Absolutely.
And then you end up, rather than looking in-house, inward into your organization, you're always looking at that software. Which is the best software? Yeah, 80% of your stuff is solved, pick up that software. It is not about the software as much as your process. So it's always like how you guys said, it's the technology enabler.
Yeah.
It helps you in putting a discipline around the process. It is not the process by itself.
Correct.
Ajit, it's very interesting that you say that, and I'll give you an example because we implemented SAP. Usse pehle, the software that we had, it allowed us to edit any vouchers that we made. Now what has happened is SAP is very fixed in its way of working. You cannot edit and make changes. So whatever you've entered is entered. So that discipline of making sure that we are very careful with how we are doing our entries. So technology itself makes the discipline come into the picture, that you're careful with what you're doing.
Just to share an experience that we have figured out, that as a team, often people come to us saying that I have this problem, can this software solve the problem? That's a very typical way. Okay, you approach it. I have a problem. Now, when you start showing the software, they come up with 10 more problems which did not exist. ये भी होना चाहिए, ये भी होना
ये भी
चाहिए.
होना चाहिए.
And that's your first realization that you don't have a process because you couldn't define what you really wanted. Even though you ran an organization, you are running it successfully, you still don't know how it's operating. You haven't documented it, which is why when you see something, you say, "I want this," but that was never the first problem statement by itself.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what happens when it comes to financials and cash flows. That's another big challenge when it comes to MSMEs. How they're always struggling. I just find business owners and MSMEs have two important things, which they do 99% of their time, which is why they say, I have no time for all these things. Business development, how do I get the next order, and cash flow. These are the two things that they want to spend their maximum time. What's cash flow jugaad and what's a financial planning? That's a very important differentiation that needs to be spoken about. So something from your experience, tell us the difference between a cash flow jugaad, which you do successfully, and what's the benefit of doing a financial discipline?
You use the word financial jugaad. So we spoke about operational jugaad. Ajit, the biggest difference I see is operational jugaad still causes stress and you will still navigate. Financial jugaad is a short route to death of the business. We all have gone through our examination time in our school and college, and the result was stuck on the wall. Have you seen how students would check their marks as if magically it has to improve compared to what they were expecting? Founders today, they check their balance sheet and the bank balance the way students check the exam results, hoping that the number just magically improves. They're okay to be in delusion that everything is okay. And I think this has been the biggest problem in most companies I have worked with, is that most founders choose to be in delusion. One of the mental impurity which keeps us away from clarity is delusion. In Sanskrit, we call it moha. Bhagavad Gita, I recollect, why did Arjun really ask so many questions to Lord Krishna? He was in complete delusion of what is a clear picture on the way he has to approach this. Today, many founders are also very delusional, but they choose to either not broach the subject of finance at all, कि भाई हमको business करना है, finance का time नहीं है, or they will never ever even employ someone who is strong in financial acumen, who can really tell them in reality where the business is. So that keeping shy away from that reality and living in delusional, I think has killed many companies, Sajid.
Amazing. Sarika?
I beg to differ a little. I'm sorry about this. It's not delusional really. It is अभी क्या जरूरी है, मतलब अरे यार वो वेंडर का बहुत फोन आ रहा है, बहुत दिमाग खा रहा है यार, चल उसका पैसा निकाल दे. अरे नहीं, वो आराम से वो समझेगा, वो बाद में करेगा. That's the way when we are doing jugaad, we are managing our cash flow. What we need to solve now, we are really not thinking of long term, we are really not thinking of a discipline, a cash flow management, a financial risk and unpredictability. It's isko dimag se hata yaar, bahut dimag, that's how it is. Ya boss ka phone aaya hai. So that is where the jugaad element in फाइनेंस कम्स वेरी ऑफन. अरे यार बैंक का आ जाएगा इंस्पेक्शन के लिए, तू ये ऐसे इसको ऐसे एडजस्ट कर ले, ये डाल दे. That happens very often. And I think when you are a smaller organization, sometimes it helps you tide over this situation. But if we are talking about scaling, if we are talking about growth, and in that, if we don't have discipline towards cash flow management, managing future financial risks, tracking our ARs, AP, fund reserves, then that can be a sure death for the organization.
Amazing. The other thing that also comes across my mind, as entrepreneurs that I have kind of been exposed to, is that one, I hesitate to believe that I can take help. Like how you guys said, no? To get a professional on board. If you can't hire him, then you consult with him. Take him on a retainer basis, but it costs you money for that. So you don't see the value proposition कि मैं इसको पैसा क्यों दूं? मैं तो कुछ सीख लूंगा. The second thing that I say is, अच्छा I will get a consultant on board so that he trains me. The problem is you're always thinking with a जुगाड़ू mind कि ये खर्चा कैसे कम करूंगा.
खर्चा कैसे कम करूं.
ठीक है? Yeah. I mean, not realizing that you have a better role to play. If I can pay money and get professional help, why should I be wasting my time on that? That's the least resource. That's not the way how a profit is built, right? You get the professional help to build it. And that transition from like how what Sarika was saying, day-to-day cash flow management to a financial discipline as to, why should I pay only when a vendor calls? That's so typical of Indian, of Indian businesses. जो vendor सबसे ज़्यादा phone करता है उसको पैसा. अरे, but why can't you build credibility कि that these are the terms? 7 दिन में पैसा मिलेगा, 25 दिन में मिलेगा, 45 days. Have clarity, have fixed date for vendor clearances, and you'll love it. I mean, very few people understand vendors are part of your ecosystem. They're just like your employees, like your customers. So why not build a plan around it and add it to the cash flow? Have you come across? Sorry, go ahead.
If I may add to your point, the biggest challenge of why they're not doing is that even companies who have reached 200 crores, 500 crores, 700 crores, their accounts or finance is managed by a 20-year-old employee with them who's a loyalist, who's still writing their accounts, and he will do as per the instructions of the owner. And I've always believed, and I've told most of my clients when I'm coaching them, is that in a business, your CFO or your finance head is the only person who should be able to question you and your decision making. But the owners are very scared to hire such a person कि ये अपने को सवाल करेगा. So they bring in people who, they will instruct to kind of do what they want to do it.
I must agree with you there, Samkit, because yes, there was a time in our business where we had people in accounts who did exactly what we said. Today, we have professional CEOs and CFOs who just turn around and say, hey, you guys are messing up. You're making the wrong decision. And it hurts the ego.
Yes.
But, मेरा धंधा मुझे कल का लड़का आके सिखा रहा है. What is this?
Correct.
So it takes a lot of maturity and it takes a lot of selflessness, if I can use that word, in your business to understand that your business is bigger than you. Correct. And what process and discipline that you bring in your business is something that will build your legacy and build it beyond you, is what, is something that as entrepreneurs we have to learn to judge.
Yeah, and I just add to what both of you beautifully actually explained this. Entrepreneurs also say, "Pura financial है ना सबको पता नहीं होगा."
Correct.
That's a big problem, Majid.
That's a big one.
You're in the business to make a profit. Profit is not a bad word. Why is it that someone should get worked up if you know that how much profit you made, how much expenses you made? It has to be transparent, and everyone needs to understand that whole concept very, very clearly. That's the yardstick to measure your business. If you're not making profit, why the hell are you running the business? And what's so great about if your team knows how much profit is being made? And I find that as the biggest mental block that, I don't want to be transparent about my business. And that's also a stumbling block when it comes to scaling. And this is a big transition difference that I have seen over a period of time, between the Jugaad and the financial discipline mindset. And both of you have clearly pointed out, it's more of the mindset. Yeah.
We are experiencing it in our organization today, where these young professionals are running the organization, making the budgets, putting all the guardrails and putting the boundaries. It is so beautiful because it is showing us even the vision for the next 3 years, which probably we would have been delusional about that. Samkit says.
Yes.
So, yes.
So this all comes to sum up on how a small business, or as a founder, or as someone who's inherited a business, a family business, and he identifies himself as an entrepreneur, as a founder, how does that transform into being a CEO or being a leader? How does that whole transition come through? Is it with a Jugadu mindset, or is it actually the, thinking through that this is Jugaad, I need it for some time, and I'm going to move beyond this? So the evolution from a leader, as a leader, from a founder to a CEO, how does it happen with the Jugadu mindset and when you cross over the Jugadu mindset? Samkit, what do you have to say to that?
So I think it's high time that really Indian entrepreneurs kind of look at that transition in a much, much serious manner, Ajit. Because India is no longer, we are trying to build for survival. Today, we are in a very strong position thanks to our last 10, 15 years of track record. So every entrepreneur, every leader really needs to understand customers today are one of our stakeholders. They are expecting absolute reliability on everything they're expecting from your business. Amazon has trained us expect next day delivery. UPI has trained us instant transactions. Zomato has trained us to expect real-time accuracy. Now, can Jugaad do this? Not possible. Only systems and discipline can do it. Even talent, today we are having a lot of people working in our businesses. They no longer want to be the hero of today, the chaotic day and a hero emerges. They want predictability, they want a structure where they are able to contribute. So I think Jugaad should be used. I think it should be used like a hybrid engine. Any businesses which say that, while we are solving a lot of problems on the ground, we need Jugaad. We need Jugaad to solve a problem. But once you've identified and you've found a solution to that problem, only discipline can help you scale up. And that transition for leaders is going to be the key factor if any businesses have to scale to the next orbit for growth.
Amazing, man. Sarika, your take on this evolution from a founder to a CEO or just as a leader?
See, transitioning from a mindset of Jugaad to a habit of discipline is a gradual process. It doesn't happen overnight. It requires commitment, self-respect, self-reflection, learning, fostering a culture of accountability, balancing it with the processes. So this balance is something which is required. This balance is something which will prepare our future for the business. It is a slow process, but a process which will take you from surviving to thriving.
True. Amazing.
Well said.
Guys, this is such an important discussion, and I guess we need to continue this discussion every month, and especially when it comes to this evolution process. And our podcast actually came because of this discussion. I think we are at the right place at the right time as Indians. We are at the cusp of a growing economy. In the last 10 years, we've grew by almost 87% as a country. And I guess there's a huge opportunity for all of us. I also see most of us, all the three of us, have come across people who just haven't changed their business. And this is just because of the Jugaad mindset. So over a conversation, we said, why don't we share our ideas, our experiences, our thoughts? It's all about collaborating and learning with each other. 30 minutes is what we had scheduled, and I guess we are close to that 30 minutes for today's podcast. So as we close today's conversation, here's one thought to leave you with. Jugaad helped many of us survive, but discipline is what will help your business scale. The real power comes when leaders know how to use both, not as identities, but as tools. The smartest companies shift gears deliberately, prototype with Jugaad, and scale with discipline. Now, as you reflect on your own organization, think about where improvisation is helping you move fast and where stronger systems, processes, and technology can help you grow further. Thank you for joining us on Beyond Jugaad. We'll see you next month with another episode where we will start diving deeper into the different areas of business where we can move beyond Jugaad and build companies that truly scale. Sarika and Samkit. Thank you very much for that interesting insights. And we're going to see you next month again with another topic where we are going to deep dive on Beyond Jugaad. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ajit.
Thank you, Ajit. Thank you, Samkit. Bye.
Before the headlines, before the funding, before the spotlight, there were builders. We mastered survival. We mastered hustle. But India's next chapter demands more. When resources were scarce, we built with ingenuity. When systems were missing, we built with trust. It demands systems. It demands standards. It demands scale. Not just businesses that run, but businesses that lead. This is the voice of India's builders. This is Beyond Jugaad.